Welcome back! We're looking at Othello, Act 2. Generally, in a Shakespearean plot, Act 2 is the rising action. And in Act 2 of Othello, Iago's plan is beginning to fall into place. He's moving all the pieces where he wants them to go, and Othello is right there in the middle of things. It's important to notice during this scene both the way Iago's machinations are working, the way all of his plans are just exactly the way he wants them, and also, in contrast, the sweet, innocent love between Othello and Desdemona. Their best love scene is in this act. We open in Cyprus, where Othello has gone to fight against the Turks, and in comes the boats. Within a few lines, we find out that the war is already over. Othello's already won. He's pretty awesome like that. Michael Cassio pulls in and is rather nervous because he's left Othello out there on the ocean. There was a storm that separated them, and Cassio feels concern for his general. He says, "Oh, let the heavens give him defense against the elements, for I have lost him on a dangerous sea." And another boat begins to pull up, but it's not Othello. It's actually Iago, his wife and Desdemona. Cassio is chatting with the former governor of Cyprus and talking about the wonderful qualities of Desdemona as they pull up. Ever gallant, Cassio greets Desdemona and Iago's wife Emilia with kisses. Iago proceeds to make a couple of quips about his wife, which leads them to discuss for a moment the qualities of women. Iago's acting a bit playful here with Desdemona and with Emilia, but we can see his continued tendency to see the worst in people, all while acting as though he's a good friend to all around him. There's a bit of wit in his joking, but it's interesting because this play is anything but funny. Oftentimes, Shakespeare's tragedies are punctuated with moments of humor in order to lighten the load, comic relief. Hamlet, for instance, is extremely witty and clever, and many of his jokes at Polonius or Rosencrantz and Guildenstern's expense make us laugh. Iago's cleverness and wit usually just make us feel uncomfortable because we feel the seething evil under the surface. It's the pleasure with which he does evil that really gets us. Cassius's courtesy to Desdemona is not overlooked by Iago. He takes her by the palm. "Aye, well said, whisper. With as little a web as this, I will ensnare as great a fly as Cassio." He loves to see anything that he can twist to his own advantage. But in comes Othello, and we have a really touching reunion scene between Othello and Desdemona. As Othello enters, he calls Desdemona, "Oh, my fair warrior." Again, Othello, the great war hero, sees the valor and trueness of Desdemona as a kind of warriorship. It's the thing that Othello knows how to value the most, and so that's what he sees in her. Listen to their reunion. Othello says, "It gives me wonder great is my content to see you here before me. Oh, my soul's joy! If ever after tempest come such calm, may the winds blow till they have wakened death. And let the laboring bark climb hills of seas Olympus high, and duck again as low as hells from heaven. If I were now to die, 'twere now to be most happy, for I fear my soul hath her content so absolute, that not another comfort like to this succeeds in unknown fate." And Desdemona replies, "The heavens forbid, but that our loves and comfort should increase, even as our days do grow." Othello replies, "Amen to that, sweet powers, I cannot speak enough of this content. It stops me here, it is too much of joy, and this the great discords be, that e'er our hearts shall make." And they kiss. Othello wonders at the happiness he feels around Desdemona. And Desdemona only foresees that their happiness and their joy will continue to grow the longer the relationship goes on. Othello feels speechless in his wonder at Desdemona and his happiness, so much so that his only expression can be a kiss at the end of this speech here. But also we see his sense of almost doubting the beauty of this moment. It certainly is his most touching moment with Desdemona, but his inability to believe that it can endure forever gives us a hint that maybe he is frightened of it ending. Not that he mistrusts Desdemona, but we'll see as we go on that maybe he mistrusts himself. The happy couple exit, and Iago is left to speak with Roderigo, who's still hanging around. Roderigo's been trusting Iago to straighten things out for him and get Desdemona for him, but Iago now says, "Oh, you know what? I think she's into Cassio." In spite of the evidence that Desdemona is really very happy with Othello, Iago points out all the ways that he thinks she is flirting with Cassio. Again, he jumps straight to very physical and very base kind of accusations. Her eye must be fed, and what delight shall she have to look on the devil? When the blood is made dull with the act of sport, there should be, again to inflame it and give it satiety, a fresh appetite, loveliness and flavor, sympathy in years, manners, and beauties, all which the more is defective in. Now, for want of these required conveniences, her delicate tenderness will find itself abused, begin to heave the gorge, disrelish and abhor the more. Very nature will instruct her in it, and compel her to some second choice. Iago feeds Roderigo with those same racist tendencies that cause him to believe that Desdemona could not possibly be happy with a man like Othello. And so he pushes Roderigo to pick a fight with Cassio in order to get him removed from his lieutenantry. Roderigo thinks it's for his own advantage, but really Iago is using it to set up his trap between Cassio, Desdemona, and Othello. He convinces Roderigo to pick a fight with Cassio at a certain time that he's going to set up. And then, as Roderigo leaves, Iago has yet another villain soliloquy. At the beginning, he discusses the love that's going on between all of the characters. Cassio loves Desdemona, I do well believe it. She loves him, 'tis apt and of great credit. The more, howbeit that I endure him not, is of a constant, loving, noble nature. And I dare think he'll prove to Desdemona a most dear husband. Everybody loves everybody else. In fact, Iago goes on to say, now I do love her too. Not out of absolute lust, though peradventure I stand accounted for as great a sin, but partly led to diet my revenge. Iago claims to love Desdemona as well, giving our third excuse here. And yet, even after he says it, he qualifies it by saying, you know what, it's not really even love, I'm not really even interested in her. I just hate Othello so much that I want to do things with his wife just to mess him up. He returns to the previous rumor that Othello had slept with Emilia. For that I do suspect the lusty Moor hath leaped into my seat. And nothing can or shall content my soul till I am evened with him, wife for wife. Or failing so, yet that I put the Moor at least into a jealousy so strong that judgment cannot cure. So his revenge for this very unfounded rumor, he would like to do bad things to Desdemona, but even more fun would be to mess up Othello, so that Othello is so jealous of Desdemona that he ruins this love that we see between the two of them. And then Iago congratulates himself on his clever plan to abuse Othello by making him hate Cassio, at the same time that he makes Othello love him. It's all the more fun to mess up your enemy while making him think you're a friend. Time to celebrate! Everyone's celebrating not only the victory of the Turks, which was really fast, but also the wedding of Othello and Desdemona. Othello is speaking with Cassio and reminds him to be careful during all the partying, make sure that a watch is still kept, and Cassio points out that Iago is actually in charge tonight. Othello says Iago is most honest. This is like about the fourth time that he's mentioned the honesty of Iago. Iago's really slippery and good at tricking him. Othello and Desdemona have their sort of honeymoon off, and they walk away, and Cassio goes to meet with Iago. Welcome, Iago, we must to the watch. And Iago says, not this hour, Lieutenant. 'Tis not yet 10 of the clock. Our general cast thus early, for the love of his Desdemona, who let us not therefore blame. He hath not yet made wanton the night with her, and she is sport for Jove. Iago claims that Othello has gone to bed early, sending them to their duties early, so they can take a little bit more of a break. And the reason he's going to bed early is obviously because it's his honeymoon. But notice again that Iago chooses to focus on the physical and lusty aspects of it, as opposed to the much more spiritual kind of love that we saw between Othello and Desdemona at the pier. Iago at this point plays off of Cassio's weakness for drinking. Cassio's trying to be responsible here, but Iago says, oh, we'll just have one drink, and we'll drink to Othello and Desdemona. Cassio, after trying to avoid it for a while, finally agrees to take one drink. Iago says, if I can fasten but one cup upon him with that which he hath drunk tonight already, he'll be as full of quarrel and offence as my young mistress' dog. Cassio and Montano and the gentlemen enter, and they all begin to drink, and Iago gets things going, singing some songs and passing the ale around. Cassio is drinking, but he's also trying really hard to be honest. God forgive us our sins, gentlemen, let's look to our business. Do not think, gentlemen, I am drunk. This is my ancient, this is my right hand, this is my left. I am not drunk now. I can stand well enough and speak well enough. The former governor Montano is not familiar with Cassio before this, and so it looks to him like Cassio is kind of a drunk. And he asks Iago about it, and Iago, instead of pointing out that this is actually an unusual event, says, "Oh yes, he's always getting into the drinks, but I try not to talk about it." And Othello just keeps brushing it off. Iago is such a manipulator. Meanwhile, Iago nudges Rodrigo to go out there and pick that fight. So Rodrigo does. As Cassio runs back in chasing Rodrigo, Rodrigo escapes while Montano tries to calm Cassio down. But Cassio, in his rage, fights with Montano and stabs him. Iago uses the opportunity to tell Rodrigo to sound a mutiny, stirring up the whole camp to chaos. Othello charges in, wondering what in the world's going on, and Othello here shows a tendency to veer away from control. Othello's a great fighter, but when he gets angry, he makes bad judgment calls. "For Christian shame put by this barbarous brawl, he that stirs next to carve for his own rage holds his soul light, he dies upon his motion." And when Iago acts all hesitant to talk about it, he doesn't want to put blame on Cassio, of course. Montano urges him to speak, because Montano's lying there bleeding. Othello goes on again in rage and says, "Give me to know how this foul rout began, who set it on, and he that is approved in this offense, though he had twinned with me, both at birth, shall lose me. Even if that man were my twin, who had been born with me, I would still cast him off." Bad news for Cassio. Iago says, "Oh, I hate to say it, but it was Cassio." Cassio just ran in chasing this guy, and all of a sudden Monsanto tried to calm him down, and Cassio skewered him. But I'm sure he didn't mean to. Othello's response, when he finds out it's his number two, he says, "I know, Iago, thy honesty and love doth mince this matter, making it light to Cassio." Yeah, Cassio, I love thee, but never more be officer of mine. You're out, bud. Poor Cassio has just been fired. And at that moment, Desdemona comes in, trying to find out what's going on as well. She's been woken by all the alarms as well. She's there just in time to catch the end of the affair. They bear Montano away to tend to his wounds, and Iago and Cassio are left. Because of the way Cassio is acting, Iago comes up to him and asks him if he's hurt. Cassio says, "I passed all surgery. Reputation, reputation, reputation. Oh, I have lost my reputation. I have lost the immortal part of myself, and what remains is bestial. My reputation, Iago, my reputation." It's funny the mention of things bestial there, which is Iago's favorite image. Iago acts like he's smoothing it over and says, "Oh, reputation, you'll be fine. It was just all kind of show on Othello's part." He'll warm right back up to you. And Iago's acting all buddy-buddy with Cassio like he's trying to help him out, and so then he offers a suggestion. "I'll tell you what you shall do. Our general's wife is now the general. I may say so in this respect, for that he hath devoted and given himself to the contemplation, mark, and denotement of her parts and graces. Confess yourself freely to her. Importune her to help, to put you in your place again. She is of so free, so kind, so apt, so blessed a disposition. She holds it a vice in her goodness not to do more than she is requested. This broken joint between you and her husband entreated her to splinter. And my fortunes against any lay worth naming, this crack of your love shall grow stronger than 'twas before." So, Cassio, you just go to Desdemona and ask for her help. She'll plead your case with Othello, and since Othello is so completely smitten with Desdemona, he'll turn around and be won back over to you. It would be a very good case. Cassio thinks it's a good idea and exits, and Iago has another soliloquy. Man, this guy just can't stop talking about how awesome his evil plans are. And what's he then, that says I play the villain? "When the advice is free I give, and honest, probable to think, and indeed the course to win the war again. For 'tis most easy the inclining Desdemona to subdue in any honest suit. She's framed as fruitful as the free elements. And then for her to win the more, were to renounce his baptism, all seals and symbols of redeemed sin, his soul is so enfettered to her love, that she may make, unmake, do what she list, even as her appetite shall play the god with his weak function. How am I then a villain? To counsel Cassio to this parallel course, directly to his good. Divinity of hell. When devils will the blackest sins put on, they do suggest at first with heavenly shows, as I do now. So he laughs at himself for seeming like such a good friend, for giving such good advice, were it not that he's going to use the goodness of Desdemona to her own destruction, and the love Othello has for her to his own destruction. Iago says he's going to pour a pestilence into Othello's ear, so that Othello suspects Desdemona of being with Cassio. And every time Desdemona says the name Cassio, which she'll do quite frequently, trying to win Cassio's case, is going to sound like just another instance of her unfaithfulness. Enter Rodrigo, who's just been beaten up. And he's really upset. He's like, that didn't work out at all. I'm going home. And Iago's like, no, you have to have patience. Everything's going exactly according to plan and everything's working out for you. And Rodrigo, the buffoon, just accepts and continues to follow Iago even though things are going worse and worse for him. Iago's ready for his next plan, and in Act 3 we'll see whether he's able to convince Othello that Desdemona has been unfaithful. Thanks for watching. You can click to subscribe or click to watch another video. I'll see you next time when we look at Act 3.